See this rich history of 5 years in which we worked and collaborated, computational chemists and computer experts, and it was really, really special and remarkable. So I shut that business down in 2008 because I was very concerned about the potential of this software being used for designing and fabricating or otherwise synthesizing viruses. And that became a reality back in 2008, and you'll read my book more about the details of that and why I decided it was ethically responsible to shut that business down and put it on mothballs and maybe potentially bring it back at a time when the consciousness of our planet could handle that technology and the responsibility of that technology to make sure that it was used for good. So after I shut that business down, I took up ballroom dancing, and after 3 years of a passionate career in ballroom dancing, I became an amateur champion. And little did I know at the time that this was laying the foundation for a spiritual awakening that took place in November of 2012, in which I participated in a 6-day retreat led by Dr. Stephen Greer. Meditative practice that he claimed could initiate contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. Now, I want to share something important about that. I came to that event very skeptical, very highly skeptical, but I had read a number of his books, and I had seen witnesses and read about testimonials of people who had attended his retreats and were practicing this meditation that claimed to have indeed made contact with ETs. And that not only did they make contact, but they initiated a friendship through this process that had lasted for many years. And I was intrigued by this, so I decided to give it a shot. And I signed up, and in November of 2012, on the 5th night of a 6-day retreat, we were gathered in the desert, 25 of us, including Greer, and a ship materialized out of thin air above our group. And at that instant, I had the answer to a burning question: are we alone? And the answer came through very clearly. We are not alone. I can't deny it. It was a truth. It was something that even as a skeptic, I doubted, frankly. But when I saw that object appear in the sky above us, and it was witnessed by many others, I could no longer doubt the existence of ETs. And so I knew that they were here. And I knew suddenly that all the stories that I'd been hearing from the witnesses of the Disclosure Project and other people that I had read books about, that their stories were most likely true. And if this was true, it was the biggest story in human history. And I wanted to know the truth about it. So that was my first question. Are we alone? And the answer came very clear, that we are not alone. Now the question became, who are they? Where are they from? What's their relationship to us? Why are they so aloof or otherwise reclusive? Why don't they show themselves? Why don't they land on the Washington Mall lawn at the Capitol and share the reality that they are with us? But there seems to be a reality or a truth here before us that they've been here for a very long time. And that is the story I'm going to share, because after a few hours from this moment, when I saw that ship appear with my own eyes, I was in the privacy of my hotel room in Borrego Springs where this was taking place. And I decided to try the meditation that I had been learning from Dr. Greer in the privacy of my hotel room, and to my great surprise, an ET materialized before me in my hotel room. I learned his name was Tejbar, and we spent 13 days together in what he called communion. And he shared with me the whole history of our planet, the history of who and what we are, and our relationship to them. And I will be unfolding that story over the next 10 days. I know that many of you are skeptical, and I encourage skepticism. I believe that if you listen to the things I have to share, and with an open mind, and do some of the things that I suggest, that you will have the confirmation that you seek to prove what I'm telling you is true. So that is what I'm here to offer to you. Proof of what I'm sharing. So we're going to begin this morning with a meditation. And the meditation is something given to me by Tejbar. And I'm going to begin by just giving you a little bit of background about the first meditation that I learned was a meditation called the CE5 protocol by Dr. Greer. I had never meditated in my life before I learned the CE5 protocol. But after that experience, about a year later, in 2013, in September, Tejbar came to me and gave me directions on a new meditation that I'm going to share with you now. And this I'm going to coin the CE6 meditation. And simply it means global contact. So we're going to begin a practice of reaching out to our star families, to our ET friends, and they will join us if you will it. So to begin this practice, we're going to take a couple of deep breaths. So breathe in through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Breathe in through your nose and exhale through your mouth. One more time. In through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Okay, now this time when we breathe in, we're going to hold the breath, and I want you to feel the pressure in your chest. Imagine that the pressure in your chest is your heart filled with love. Just imagine that, if you will. Just give me some room here. I know that might be uncomfortable for some of you, but for those of you that know what I'm talking about, fill that heart chakra, that chest area full of love. So as we breathe in, imagine your oxygen, and that's being transmuted in your body into love energy, into the heart chakra. We're charging the heart chakra. And as we hold it in our chest, let it build up. Let that pressure build up when you get to that point when you want to release it. And as we release it, we're going to sing a note. And the note is HU, H-U. And some say this is one of the most ancient words for creator. So it's a song to creator. So we're going to do this 3 times. And then we're going to continue to do it for 20 minutes. Actually, for 22 minutes. I normally do this every morning for 20 minutes, but Tejbar came to me recently and said we're going to do this for 22 minutes together. And this is the practice we're going to begin each day of the Harmonic Convergence with. So I want to encourage you to join me at 11 in the morning, Pacific time, for the 10 days. And we're going to start with this meditation together. And as we sing HU for 22 minutes, just focus on a beautiful note, the word of the Creator. and what that means to you. What is inner peace? Ask yourself that question in contemplation and ask Creator to give you the answer. And for 6 minutes, just marinate in that idea. Okay? So let's begin now. We're going to do 3 hues together in unison, and then after that, let's just continue on our own for 22 minutes. We will let you know when the 22 minutes are over. And then we'll go into 6 minutes of contemplation. We're just going to be quiet. I'm not going to say anything. You will not say anything. And then in the end, the last part of this, I will be talking about peace in the theme of the day. Okay? So let's do this together. Okay, let's get comfortable in a seated position. It doesn't matter what kind of position you are. Just be upright. You can even lay down if you wish. If you're tired, lay down. Just be a comfortable position. You can do this in any comfortable position you wish. I'm going to do a mudra, a special mudra. While I do this, you can do it as well. It doesn't matter. Okay, so we're going to begin. Take a deep breath through your nose. So I don't think that was quite 22 minutes, but I'm going to stop. That's a good first day, and we're going to now go into contemplation for 6 minutes. So just close your eyes, and I want you to pay attention to your mind's eye. That's the term I'm going to use for the screen that appears in your eyesight with your eyes closed. So in your third eye, just pay attention to any colors that may come. And if a dot appears at some point, it may not be right away, just acknowledge it. Pay attention to it. As though it's there for you. Just humor me. Go with it. So let's close our eyes and watch the third eye. Use the third eye. Okay. I hope that was enjoyable. I love doing that every morning. It's a time to reflect. It's a time to get ready for the day. It's a time to find inner peace and come from a centered place before we begin our journey for the day ahead. And I found this a very beneficial practice in my life for the last almost 8 years. And I encourage you to do it. So if you continue to be a part of the Harmonic Convergence 2020 event for the next 10 days, you can join me in this practice, and hopefully it becomes a habit that you can continue after the 14th of July. So let's talk a little bit about inner peace and what's meant by that. I believe inner peace is a combination of many things. To be at peace, we must be content. We must be healthy. We must be happy. And these words are so powerful, but we take these things for granted so often in the rat race that is life in these modern times. We don't take a pause in the day to reflect on those things that are most important. What are the things that make us peaceful within ourselves? Never mind world peace. Never mind all the things that are going out in the world that disrupt or distract or otherwise take focus away from the peace within. So what's great about the great pause of 2020 that we've been experiencing together for the past few months is that it's actually given us this opportunity in many ways to reflect what is important. And we have learned, many of us have learned, that what's important are our family members, our health, and many other things that we really haven't had the luxury of thinking about until the last few months. And I know many of you out there are nodding your head, yeah, that's right. This has been quite an experience the last few months. It's been on many levels chaotic and stressful and turbulent. It's one way to look at it, but I like to look at the positive side of life, and I like to look at, the cup is half full. And I'm hoping that by the end of this 10 days you adopt this philosophy of being optimistic and remembering we always have control of our thoughts, and that if we wish it, if we will it, and I believe we do have the ability, all of us, to control our thoughts and to center on those things that are beneficial, that we can create a wonderful world for ourselves, and that will result in a wonderful world for all. So this is about inner peace, and peace is healthy behavior, healthy food, healthy exercise, and being around things that make us happy, that energize us. I want you to think of yourself as a spiritual being. I'm going to go and take that word for a moment and throw it out there. And what I mean by a spiritual being is you're more than just this physical thing, that you extend all around you a sphere of influence. And for many of us, that sphere is very close. If you feel shy or like a wallflower, somebody who doesn't like to be put out there, you don't like to say a lot because you're uncomfortable about the way you may be perceived by others. You don't feel like you're articulate. That would be someone that is more of an introvert, and your field of influence, your sphere of influence, is going to be rather small, and that's your choice. Then there are other people that we know who, whenever we're with them, we can't help but smile. We can't help but be charged by their energy. And what I'd like to suggest is that these people bring with them a sphere of influence that's much, much larger, that they've filled with joy. There's something within them that follows them, that affects their surroundings, everyone. And there are even some people that when they're around these amazing, loving beings, they're uncomfortable and they will leave. And that's the power of positive energy. Now, negative people have this power as well. You know these people. They come into a room and the whole place comes down, and it's just, you don't want to be with that person. They're loud, they're boisterous, they're full of themselves, or they're otherwise very abrasive. And we don't like being around those kind of people. And so we avoid them. Continue to do that. Follow your intuition. Control your environment. Establish barriers. And be very aware of who's coming into your field, because you create your field, others create their fields. And when they come into your field, if they're negative, we'll call them energy vampires. They suck the energy out of us. The happiness, the joy, the love is sucked away. And in an environment in which we are with these people, either by choice or often we're forced to be with these people, they drain us. And we are sympathetic beings, and we will be affected by that energy. And I just suggest that you think deeply on these things, what I'm telling you, and begin, if you want, to create a sphere of influence that you carry with you wherever you go, that is positive, that's full of joy and optimism, and be one of those people that is welcome among others that also carry that energy with them. And when you come together, wonderful magic happens. You feed off of each other. That energy that comes from you is given to those others, and they feed off of that energy, and they create more of that energy, which is a feedback loop to you. And through this feedback, you create a powerful sphere of influence collectively. We're going to explore this idea more through the next 10 days because it's central to the harmonic convergence and what we're going to be doing over the next 10 days. So the next thing I'd like to discuss with regards to peace is things that we can do that will help build that energy of peace, of inner peace. One of the practices that I would like to suggest that you think about and hopefully begin to practice is healthy habits such as exercise. Whatever you can do, whatever you can make time for, but make it a priority. This isn't just, going for a short walk. Go on a long walk. Go out in nature if you're going to walk. Go somewhere where there's that good energy, that you feel that feedback that we talked about, the feedback of the positive energy. And one of the beautiful things about nature, and look all around behind me, this is an amazing place, Ojai, the Ojai Valley. You can't help but be happy and smile and just soak up the love that comes from the sun, from nature, from the mountains, from Lake Casitas nearby. And wherever you live, there's got to be a place that is a little natural sanctum that you can go and feel safe and feel that feedback of nature, of Mother Gaia, and the love she's willing to give you if you only pay attention. So let's do that. Let's think about that and try to make that part of our daily practice. The next thing is think about the food that you eat, the things that you take into your body. We've all heard the phrase, we are what we eat. Do you want to be a Cheeto or a Dorito? You're welcome to be that if you want, if that's the kind of thing, fried foods, if that's what you like to do. You know, we live in a world of free will. It's one of God's gifts, one of Creator's gifts to us. We have free will. So if that's the thing you want to do, go for it. But I'd like to suggest that if you want to raise your frequency, if you want to raise your consciousness, you want to be part of something bigger than yourself that's benefiting the world, think about the things you eat. I suggest eat organic, eat fresh greens, juices, and really think about it. Count your calories. Start educating yourself. How many calories are in an apple? How many calories are in a McDonald's large French fry? Do that. What's in a tuna sandwich? And how many calories contribute? So educate yourself about foods, but specifically about organic foods. There's a movement afoot in this world about the awareness of the benefits of organic foods. And it's because it works. So for those of you that wish to create more inner peace, consume and digest good food. And the last thing that I'm going to get back to, and we started that, was with a daily practice of meditation. And it's simply a way of giving gratitude and creating that space for ourselves to begin our day in a balanced, centered place. So 3 things, 3 takeaways here. Food, exercise, and meditation. Make meditation a priority. It will benefit you. There's been lots of studies done on it. Go research it. Make these things a priority. You can go, when this whole COVID pandemic is over, we're going to return to a new world in which we're back into our workplace. The world will be different, but there are many things that will be the same. So plan that morning meditation, plan what you're going to eat, and make sure you take time to get outside in nature and at least go for a walk in a place that's comforting and that gives you a sense of love and gratitude and groundedness. All right. Well, I'm going to finish this session of the meditation with a little bit more about my experience in 2012 and my own journey of finding inner peace. So on the evening of November 15th, 2012, as I was sitting there right before I saw this ship materialize out of thin air above our group in Borrego Springs, I was a person who I would call a classic material scientist. I was a businessman, a very successful one. I was a family man. I had a daughter, and I was married to a lovely woman who was my partner for 27 years. And we were a family, a very tight family. And we were all atheists. We actually Funny enough, being atheists, we belong to a Jewish temple in Birmingham, Michigan called the Birmingham Temple that was made up of primarily members, congregant members that were atheist or identified as agnostic. And some of us, including myself, actually identified as both. They're not mutually exclusive. And I like to explain it this way. An atheist is a person who doesn't believe in a creator. An agnostic is a person who doesn't know for sure. So I'd like to say that, to put it in a way that's easy to grasp, that if back then I had been a betting man, I would have bet that there is no God. But I did give room that there was a possibility I was wrong. But I was pretty certain that there wasn't a God. I didn't see any evidence of it. Now I look back on that person and realize how naive I was. And I think that naivete is a consequence of living in a modern world in which we are so focused on the next thing. We're always in a big hurry to the next thing that we're doing. We got to get to work. We've got to eat. We've got to drive our kids to school. We've got to hurry up and do that next thing. And we're in this kind of rat race where we're not reflecting on life. We'd never take time to reflect on the things that are truly important in our life, and being in nature and those kind of settings that inspire us in new ways that might affect us in a spiritual way. So I was one of these people. I was very ambitious. I was a classic overachiever. And my record speaks for itself. I achieved great things as a young man. And I continue to have that trait. I do want to continue to pursue great ambitions, goals, and dreams that I have. And this is one of them. The Harmonic Convergence 2020 event is something I've been planning for 5 years. So Tejbar came to me on the morning of He did come to me on the morning of February 14th, 2020, but I'm going to come back to that later. The first time he came to me was November 16th at roughly 3 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't sleep. After seeing that ship, I was back in my hotel room and I was tossing and turning, ruminating about the implications now that I was fully aware that we aren't alone. And I decided to sit up at the head of my bed, and I began this meditation. And the meditation led to a being, Tejbar, appearing at the end of my bed. And to give you a brief summary of what he looked like a ghost or a hologram of light, of bright, light blue light. He was humanoid. He had eyes with triangular pupils, standing at the end of my bed, scintillating. And as I beheld this amazing being at the head of my bed, I wasn't sure what was going to happen next, so all I focused on was observing him. I wanted to burn into my memory the magnificent being I was looking at. I was an artist as a child, as a young man as well, and I was a very good artist, and I wanted to remember what I was looking at so that one day I could render a picture of this being. So I just observed him for maybe 4 or 5 minutes. And then I finally gave him a greeting, and I said to him, "It is a great honor, and I'm grateful that you're here. I hope this is the beginning of a lifelong friendship. I completely trust you to do with me and my body anything that you wish. I completely trust you." And as soon as that thought, and it was a thought, I knew from Greer and the 5 previous days that we had been together, he said that these high beings, these highly advanced beings could read our thoughts. So I assumed that was true, so it wasn't said out loud. It was given telepathically. And as soon as I finished that message, he began walking from the end of my bed and approached me on my left side. So imagine there's this being right here, just a foot away from me, and I'm looking up into his eyes. And as I'm looking up into his eyes, I notice his hand is moving, so I look down, and he's got his hand with his index finger out like this, and he's coming very slowly towards me, giving me plenty of time to react and prepare for what's about to happen. And I think he's just simply going to touch me, which he does. He touches me on my elbow, and I feel him touching me, and it feels like a tingly sensation, like, pins and needles, like static electricity. And then he continues to push through my elbow into my left side, through my back, and into the right side of my body. And as that's happening, his right shoulder is beginning to blend or merge with the left side of my body. And as this happens, I feel that tingly sensation suddenly increase very rapidly, and I wasn't anticipating it. I almost jumped up. The fight or flight response was kicking in, and I forced myself to sit still because I had just given this amazing being my word that I completely trusted him. So I wanted to honor that, and I forced myself to sit still, and it took everything because it was a wild, freaky experience, I can tell you. And as he completed the merging process and my body was completely tingling, I felt like I was going down the first big hill of a roller coaster, and I was just hanging on and waiting it out to see what happened. And eventually that feeling, that tingly sensation began to dissipate. And after another couple of minutes, it was completely gone, and I felt normal again physically, but I had this acute awareness that I was not alone, that there was a being inside of me, an entity. And after a moment of checking and being certain of this, I asked my first question, and my question was, "What's your name?" And he said, using my vocal cords in my mouth, he said out loud, "Tejaba." And so I tried to repeat it. I said, "Tezbar?" He said, "No, Tejaba." And I said, "Spell it." And he said, Tezjaba. Tejaba. And then I said it again, and it took me about 6 or 7, maybe as many as 9 times for me to say it, and he was satisfied. And I knew it. He didn't tell me, I just felt it. So this began a 13-day experience that he called a communion, a union of 3 things: the physical body, my astral body or my energy body, that name we give the soul that's evolving through a process, and the celestial body. That was him. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are all over the world, friends. Watching now the Harmonic Convergence 2020. This is a 10-day event created by Mark Sims over here. Thank you so much for joining us, for creating all of this. We're going to go on a wonderful journey over the next 10 days. And we're starting now.
Yeah, we're starting today. It's an exciting time.
Yes, it is. We're going to be talking about multidimensional beings. We're going to be talking about planetary alignments. We're going to be talking about joy, about celebration, about nature. We're going to be talking about fear of the shadow. We're going to be talking about all of these really, really big subjects. But first, I want to know a little bit more about you, and I'm sure our viewers do as well. What brought you to this moment? Who were you? What is your context? What's your background, Mark?
Yeah, well, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I come from a background in computers and the information technology field. So in 1986, I graduated from college at Eastern Michigan, got my first job with Sun Microsystems, which was a startup out of Silicon Valley, and I helped found the first office in Detroit, which is the capital of the automotive industry, at least it was back then. I had an incredible career at Sun over 5 years, helping support that office in a technical support role. It was a sales office, and I reported to the sales manager who was in charge of the entire sales region of the Midwest, and most specifically Detroit, which was a real center for adopting technology like the workstations we built in California. And they were being used as 3D CAD systems, 2D and 3D CAD systems for automotive design. And my background and training at college was in computer-aided design, and so I was perfectly suited for helping answer technical questions for customers potentially looking at purchasing our computers to replace drafts boards with 3D modeling systems. And the Sun computer was very powerful and had high-speed graphics capabilities that made it possible for draftsmen and women to design on the computer. So that's the beginning of my career, and after 5 years at Sun, I saw the trend of the internet being commercialized and used in ways of transmitting large data files and using it for email communications. And so I started a company, a consulting company called Netrex, that ended up being an internet security company that helped businesses connect securely to the internet. So we sold firewalls, intrusion detection systems, antivirus servers, web filtering servers, and other technologies to provide a comprehensive internet security solution to a sophisticated and large company that had lots of requirements for data exchange over the internet. And it was being at the right place at the right time. My company became very successful. I started 7 offices in the US by the time I sold the business in '99. And then I started my second company called Netrex. And this is my foray into my second area of interest, and that was nanotechnology. So I read a book while working at Sun called Engines of Creation that was written by a man named Dr. Eric Drexler. He was a Stanford professor who did his dissertation on nanotechnology, the ability to design and ultimately synthesize molecular machine systems. Think of tiny robots that are so small you can't even see them hardly with a microscope. They're that tiny.
Whoa.
But they could swim around in your body or float around in your body and do useful things like monitor your health and email you or notify you if you had some kind of problem with your health. That kind of application of nanotechnology inspired in me the idea of creating a 3D modeling system of designing nanomachines or nanorobots that were designed in atomic detail so that you could ultimately build them in atomic resolution, and every atom was like a Lego put exactly in its place, and that would lead to breakthroughs in medicine and energy and other areas that would help the human condition. So that inspired me and was my second business that was amazingly successful, especially when we got involved in what was called structural DNA nanotechnology, which was the first attempt to actually synthesize arbitrarily complex three-dimensional structures out of DNA with atomic resolution. And so we collaborated with a group at Caltech at the Winfrey Lab, and specifically with Paul Rodeman and his team that were using DNA as a way to construct very tiny structures from the bottom up using their Crick-Watson pairing rules of DNA. And we succeeded in collaborating with them, adding support for modeling DNA, and then our program got sophisticated enough where it could actually spit out the nucleotide sequence for all the single strands of DNA needed to synthesize billions of copies of the target structure designed with our software. And that was a big deal. We did it. We actually were able to design an arbitrarily complex structure that had never been designed before and on our computer, and it just took us
like 10 days all on itself.
Yeah, so that was a major breakthrough, that we could demonstrate that this was possible. And I decided to shut that company down because of some ethical and moral concerns I personally had about this technology falling into the wrong hands, because what we ended up building, I didn't know this when I started the company in the onset, but as I worked and led the company, I realized where we were going was creating a CAD system for designing things like viruses, synthetic viruses that you could actually create in the lab. And you know, it's one thing to create that using the traditional tools of biotechnology, but to take something that had never ever seen the light of day, a totally new synthetic virus that somebody could design and build in a lab and potentially get loose in the wild, represented an existential threat.
Yeah.
And so I shut the company down for that reason, because our software was written with open source, in open source, and it was freely available by simply registering and then downloading the software. We had over 10,000 copies of the software go out over the 5-year period that I had that business running. So it was after that I retired a second time, and then I took up ballroom dancing and I became a champion ballroom dancer.
No way!
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I loved ballroom and dancing, and
that's a shift.
Yeah, it was a different thing to do.
Yeah.
And I really fell in love with it, and I was passionate about it. I was in the studio 4 to 6 hours a day, typically 5 or 6 days a week, and I competed all over the country. And I got to a point where I was competing at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, somewhere in North America. And in the 3rd year of my dancing career, I became a champion, a ballroom dancer, an amateur champion. But it was quite a feat for a 50-year-old guy. I was 49 actually at the time.
Wow, yeah.
And it was right after I became a champion that I had this life-altering experience, and that was when I learned about Dr. Stephen Greer and what he was doing, teaching people the CE5 protocol, which was a meditative practice that he developed to initiate contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. And I was skeptical, very skeptical when I first heard about this guy.
Right.
But after I read his books and vetted him, and there were a lot of people claiming that they had indeed met extraterrestrials, that they had had face-to-face experiences, in fact, that led to friendships, ongoing friendships with ETs, I was like, you know, I want to look into this. You know, this intrigues me. So in 2012, I signed up for one of his 6-day retreats, and this time it happened to be in Borrego Springs, California. Now I'm from the Midwest. I grew up in Michigan, and when I went to this California retreat in Borrego Springs for 6 days of meditation with Greer and 24 other people, I was still a skeptic. I was very cautious not to be bamboozled. And initially, I was, underwhelmed with what he was teaching us and what he was saying. I just found it very odd, kind of bizarre stories he was sharing with our group and what he was claiming. But then on the 5th night of our 6-day training, we were all 25 of us in a circle in the desert doing our meditation. And right after we meditated, we opened our eyes and we're looking up in the sky just to see if anything showed up. And a ship materialized out of thin air right in front of us.
Whoa.
And when you see that with your own eyes, and I saw the whole thing, I was looking right in the spot in the sky when it appeared, and I saw it just come out of nothingness, like uncloaking itself. Although it didn't have the classic uncloaking kind of thing, it just felt and looked like it was shifting into our physical reality. It was just gradually materializing. And then it got to a point where it seemed to be almost fully materialized, and then it vanished, slowly, or rapidly, I should say, dematerialized. And that whole transition may have lasted no more than 4 seconds, 3 to 4 seconds at the most. But that's all it took for me to realize we are not alone. And the people I were with were equally amazed.
Yeah.
And there was something about the ship too. It appeared as an egg-shaped, what I call a geodesic ellipsoid. So if you're familiar with Buckminster Fuller and the geodesic dome he invented, that structure with the triangular faceted panels that connect and make hexagonal and pentagonal shapes, that's referred to as a geodesic dome or sphere if it's a full circle. This was like that, only it was stretched out into an oval shape or egg shape. And I had recognized it immediately because I was very familiar with Buckminster Fuller's work, and I had, as a college student, written a program to create a geodesic sphere. And when I saw that materialize in the sky, I knew exactly what it was. And it had this corona around it, this halo of green, and the ship itself was green, or whatever the object was. It was green, and the illumination from within was of a otherworldly source. It really inspired awe in me. It was like a divine light, unlike anything I'd ever seen before. And I've read since about people who claim to have seen some light or object that appeared in the sky that they attributed to some divine source. And I can relate to that because of my own experience. And this was at a time when I was an atheist. I had been an atheist my entire adult life, even though I had been raised in a Christian family and went to church as a young man. I decided in my college years that I was an atheist. And I had maintained that belief system up until this moment, or until soon after this moment. And it was the first time that I had really felt like I was touched by something divine. And I'll never forget that moment. And it really shifted me immediately, knowing that we aren't alone.
Yeah, it's that difference between belief and then having the direct experience that is like irrefutable, right? And that's what a lot of this kind of the people that have had contact or that tell these stories, it's this irrefutable certainty, right?
Right.
And have you built a relationship with a being from a different dimension or galaxy? I mean, I'm so curious about that.
Well, my reference point with regard to the UFO and ET phenomenon was pretty traditional. I think most people think of ETs as physical beings that are technically advanced relative to us. And they come from other star systems, and they're able to travel vast distances with technology that either creates a wormhole, that bends space and time so that you don't have to travel such long distances over long periods of time.
Right.
And I believe that's true, that technology does indeed exist, and there are ETs that travel the cosmos in ships that do this. But what happened to me later that night is after we finished our field work, which was the name given to our meditative practice during the evening, we would typically end about 1 in the morning, and then we would go back to our hotel rooms or Airbnbs, get a good night's sleep, and then start the next day. When I went back to my hotel room, I could not fall asleep. I was so juiced up from this experience, and my mind was racing and, contemplating all the implications of this fact that we are not alone. I'm asking questions like, who are they? Where are they from? How long have they been here? What's their agenda? Why are they so aloof? If they're here, why are they seemingly aloof, and why would they then appear when asked to appear by a small group of 25 people?
Right.
There's
questions.
a mystery. So these were the things that were going on in my noggin as I'm laying in bed. And what occurred to me was something that Greer had said earlier in the retreat, like on the first or second day. And that was that it would be possible potentially to have a face-to-face contact with an extraterrestrial only if we gave it permission and if we were ready for that experience, that we wouldn't freak out. And that they had the ability with their technology or whatever they had to determine whether we qualified for a face-to-face contact. They knew, based on our state of mind and our auric field or our emotional state, if we could handle it. And I knew I could handle it. I was there to get to the truth of this matter.
Right.
And I was bold. I wanted to show that I was courageous and willing to do whatever it took to make face-to-face contact. So after remembering what Greer said, I decided to sit up in my bed and do my own meditation and try to summon a ET to come into the bedroom. And guess what? It worked.
My goodness.
So after about 15 minutes of meditation, I opened my eyes, and standing at the end of my bed is a light being, a being that appears to be a hologram. But it was strange because he was very bright and he was humanoid, clearly humanoid. He had eyes, he had a body that was clearly humanoid. His head was slightly larger in relationship to his body than a human head. But for the most part, he looked like a human, but very skinny and slightly longer arms. After a few moments of staring at him and realizing he's just standing there, I offered a greeting that I had practiced. And that greeting had 3 parts. It was, I am honored and very grateful that you're here. Number 2, I hope this is the beginning of a lifelong friendship. Because I had heard people having such relationships with ETs. And I wanted that, and I wanted that intention to be known. And the third thing I felt was important to convey is that I completely trusted this being, that I trusted they were benevolent and they weren't going to hurt me. An advanced species would have no use in tormenting me or otherwise hurting me, so I just assumed that they were showing themselves to me in a effort to make contact for some purpose, maybe, to initiate contact with all of humanity. So I stated to this light being standing in front of me, I completely trust you to do with me and my body anything that you wish. And as soon as that thought, and this was all stated through telepathy, I knew that they could hear me through telepathy because I'd read books about it, and Greer had told us all that you don't need to speak verbally, they can hear your thoughts. So as soon as that thought had been projected, that I trust you completely, it started walking from the end of my bed and approached me on my left side. I'm sitting in the lotus seating position, and I'm not moving a muscle. I don't want to do anything to spook it or otherwise cause it to leave. I just wanted to maintain my composure and show that I was that I trusted him. And I looked up into his face, and what I realized when he got close, and he was only, a foot or 2 from my face, is what I thought were eyes actually appeared to be like sockets of a skull. And what I thought were pupils in his eyes, which were triangular, were actually the optical canal, the optic nerve canal that goes from the orbital into the brain, where the eye's optic nerve goes from the eye socket into the brain.
Right.
And I could see into that canal. It was dark, and it appeared at a distance of 6 to 8 feet when he was at the end of my bed to be pupils. And he looked like an ET. But when he was close, I'm like realizing these are sockets of a skull. And I could even see the fissures of, the bones that make up the orbital. And right when I realized this, and I'm gazing deeply into his eyes, I notice down here somewhere that there's movement. I look down, and he's got his hand reaching out to me and slowly, intently coming towards me with a finger. And I'm just sitting there, sitting still, watching him. And he touches my left elbow, and I feel a tingly sensation. I can feel the touch. And it feels like static electricity, but it's not real sharp or painful. It's just a tingly feeling. And then he continues to penetrate my elbow slowly with his finger, and I can feel that tingly sensation now in my elbow. He continues to push through my left torso, through my back, through the other side, and now the right side of his body is merging with my shoulder. And we're beginning to merge, and where our bodies are overlapping or merging, I'm feeling this intense tingly sensation all of a sudden. And it was so unanticipated and so intense that I almost jumped up because my fight or flight response was kicking in. And but it took all my willpower to catch myself from jumping up and sit still and honor what I just told him, that I completely trust you.
Yeah.
And so I forced myself to sit there as he's merging with my body, and as he's doing so, I'm just getting tingly all over. And it was becoming kind of like a rush, a head rush or a body rush of this sensation of tingly. And it was a real intense sensation, and it took everything for me to just sit still and remain calm and trust that it was okay, because this was not what I expected at all. Finally, after he completely merged with my body, it took a few seconds to notice that there was a lightening of the sensation, a dissipation. And eventually, after a minute or two, it completely returned to normal. My body did. But I was left with this acute awareness that I was not alone, that there was somebody or something in my body, another sentient being, another conscious being. And I remember that moment where I'm like, okay, I feel normal, but there's an entity or somebody inside of me, And so I took stock of that and thought about it for a little bit before I asked my first question. And my first question is, what's your name? And using my mouth and my voice, my vocal cords anyway, not my voice necessarily, because I'll tell you exactly what he said. I'll try to imitate him as best I can. Mm-hmm. This is exactly what he said. He said, Tejaba. And I said, Tezbar? And he said, no, Tejaba. And I said, spell it. And he said, T-E-Z-J-B-A-R, Tejaba. Just like that. Yeah, it was pretty wild.
That must have been pretty freaky.
It was freaky. It was definitely freaky. It was very freaky.
And then what happened?
And then I said, where are you from? And he said, I'm from Earth. Now, when he answered that question, He didn't say it verbally. This was the first time he communicated with me, answering my question. So he said telepathically, I am from Earth. And I said, you don't look like any Earth creature I've ever seen. Can you explain? And then he went on to say, I was once human like you. I lived roughly 3,000 years ago in an area that is today called Tierra del Fuego. You will find it at the very southern tip of South America. Well, now this message came in very clear. There was no mistaking. And I had never heard of a place called Tierra del Fuego in all 49 of my years.
Wow.
And I've never been in South America. To this day, I've never set foot in South America. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
and in fact, I want to make a pilgrimage to Tierra del Fuego one day soon. Yeah.
But so I'm just not familiar with the geography of that part of the world. I know the countries, of course, but not the provinces. And Tierra del Fuego is a province of Argentina, the most southern tip of Argentina, which is the most southern country within South America. So I didn't know this, so I decided to confirm this information by getting my laptop, which I had brought with me, and I had Wi-Fi and internet access, so I started up Google Earth on my computer, and I typed in Tierra del Fuego, and I hit the search button. And you know how the globe in Google Earth starts to zoom in and rotate to the location you type in? Well, that started happening, and I saw it rotating into South America and into the southern tip of South America. And then when it finished, there it was in letters, Tierra del Fuego. And I was stunned. You could have knocked me over with a feather. Really, I was like dumbfounded. After realizing that, this was a form of confirmation, that I'm not having a discussion with some alter ego I created that might have been triggered by this experience. This was definitely interdimensional or interspecies or whatever kind of communication it was. It was definitely with some kind of being that was
outside of yourself.
Outside,
right?
yeah, outside but inside.
But inside.
There's all these seemingly paradoxes with what I was experiencing and what I thought of as an extraterrestrial. So then I decided, before I put away my computer, that I would Google his name because it's such an unusual spelling. I decided to give it a shot before I put it away and continued my interview with him. So I typed in Tezjbar, Tezjbar, and there was one hit. Now this is back in 2012 in November, and there was only one hit when I typed in Tezjbar. And I clicked on the link, and it was a book. It was in Google Docs that had been published in 1916 by an anthropologist named Jonathan Cooper. And he was commissioned by the Smithsonian Institute to write a book about the tribes of Tierra del Fuego. And in that book, in the back, was a glossary of words that were translated from the native language of the tribes of that area into phonetic English. And the word Tezjbar, spelled Tezjbar, literally means forehead in their language. Isn't that bizarre?
Wow.
So I closed my laptop, I put it away, and I continue my interview with him, and I say, so, you were once human, how did you take this form? And he said, well, after I died, I went to the astral realm. I ascended to the astral realm, is exactly how he put it. And I said, well, this astral realm, it kind of sounds like heaven. And he says, yes, this is what the Christians refer to as heaven, but it's much more complex than the Christian concept. It's something that no one could really understand without experiencing it firsthand. And that's where he went. And I said, well, is this where I'm going to go when I die, to this astral realm you're talking about? And he said, no, not necessarily. He says, what typically happens when a human being dies is that they're reincarnated to continue their path of learning through lifetimes. And they get to some point where, if certain criteria are met, they will then ascend. And I said, well, what's that criteria of ascension? And he said, not then. He told me to wait. He said, I can't tell you right now. Or he didn't say, I can't tell you. He just basically said, I'll tell you later. But what I found out later, on the 13th day he was with me, the final day of our communion, which lasted 13 days, he said the criteria for ascension of the human to the next level of our conscious evolution is mastering unconditional love. Wow. And evidently he had done it some 3,000 years ago. And according to him, he was one of the first to ascend on Earth.
So he tells you that his name is Forehead.
Yeah, great. And that he was the chieftain of a large tribe in Tierra del Fuego, and that evidently when he died, he ascended. And what I learned over time, over this 13-day period, is it was because he was the leader of his tribe, a chief, and he really led them out of love and was working in service to his people, that he met this criteria and ascended.
Right.
That seems to be the nature of this ascension, is, you know, being in a role in which you're of service to others and loving them in all the ways one can love when you're in service to others. So I was 3 days into this communion experience before I went home, which was really good because it gave me time to integrate this experience before I was faced, you know, with dealing with my family. So I flew back to Michigan, and when I arrived, it was dinner time on Monday evening. And we had dinner, my wife and I had dinner. She had made dinner while I was driving home from the airport. And then we went to bed that night, and the next day I went to my office and continued my communion in private because I was continuing my interview with him. I was asking lots of questions about the nature of consciousness and who he was and what his journey was like, because since he was human, it was clear to me that he was much further along the evolutionary road of consciousness than myself, and through him and his description of that process. But then at some point I told my wife that I had a face-to-face contact experience with an ET.
Wow.
Now, I didn't tell her that this being had merged with my body. I knew that would freak her out. But I thought I could broach the subject initially by just saying, there's something I need to tell you, and that is that I had a face-to-face contact, and I've kept that from you, but now I've decided to share it with you.
Because she knew that you had gone to the Stephen Greer
Oh
meditation,
yeah,
right?
oh yeah. She was very skeptical, but supportive of my going. And I had not talked to her or called her since my communion experience for a reason, because I was really interested in staying, in that state of consciousness in which I was communicating with Tejbar. And I didn't want to have to lie to my wife about the experience I was having. I just felt it was better to wait until I got home to broach the subject, and then even that was difficult. And this entire time I knew I would eventually have to tell her something. And when that day came, which was the day before Thanksgiving, it was the 20th of November. Thanksgiving came on the 21st. I told her after watching a movie together late at night, we had gone out to see a movie, I told her that I had had this face-to-face contact experience, and she really was uncomfortable. I mean, you could say she freaked out.
Wow.
And was concerned that I had been drugged by Greer, and she was convinced he was a cult leader and that I was a victim of his, manipulation, and that I had been drugged, and what I claimed was a result of a drug that caused me to hallucinate.
Right.
She insisted that I see a doctor and get a full physical examination and a psychiatric evaluation, which I immediately agreed to. I knew I was fine, but I wanted to placate her and make her comfortable that I was okay. And because we were big donors to the University of Michigan Hospital, and we had contacts there in the administration of the hospital, she made a call the day after Thanksgiving, made an appointment for me to go. So on the 26th, I went to the hospital in the morning and I signed in and went and had a barrage of physical examinations in which they showed I was perfectly normal. In fact, I was a specimen of health. And then the afternoon, I went to the psychiatric area of the hospital and was interviewed by 3 psychiatrists who deemed me bipolar and involuntarily committed me to the hospital, in which I spent 20 days.
Wow.
And here I was, this incredibly successful businessman and very wealthy, a pillar of my community, a role model. And I had never experienced the loss of my freedoms. And I was not even given the choice or the right to a phone call, like a criminal. They do not even allow that. I said, I want to talk to my lawyer, and they said, you have no right to a lawyer.
Wow.
And that was a real shock. And so my family, my daughter and my wife had come with me. And of course, my daughter was very upset, and so my wife was shaken up by this. But they went back home, and I was left in the hospital, and then eventually at 3 o'clock in the morning, taken from the holding area in the psych ward lobby up to the psych ward floor, which was the top level of the hospital, the 9th floor, and I spent 20 days there. And it was a real awakening for me to realize how easy it is to lose your basic freedoms. And I had not done anything wrong. I just simply shared my experience with some psychiatrist who, for whatever reason, felt that my life somehow was threatened by my own, mental issues that they had diagnosed me with.
Yeah.
They felt it was in my best interest for me to be institutionalized.
Well, it's a common theme, isn't it? Because this whole the people that have these experiences and that come forward like that so often are treated as kooks and loons and
as mentally ill
and mentally ill and drugged and having these ridiculous experiences that aren't based on any form of reality. And it's an interesting thing because now we have this huge portion of the population throughout the world that understands and believes that there are other forms of life in the universe, which I believe is a very reasonable assumption.
It's a foregone conclusion.
It's like,
it's
I don't
a
have any
statistical
direct experience,
certainty.
But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty big universe, you know what I mean? Like, there are probably other forms of life in it. And yet it is such a huge amount of the population that has these beliefs and are completely discredited as kind of kooks. And it's almost it's a bit as big as a religion almost, isn't it? Or as big as a kind of like a belief system.
Well, we've been conditioned in the West to respond in this way to somebody who claims to have a contact experience with an extraterrestrial.
Right.
And so it takes a lot of courage, or in my case, I was very naive into thinking, because I was, such a upstanding and intelligent individual in my community, that I could convince others that what I was sharing with them was the truth. I think people are so threatened by the idea that ETs might be on this planet that, that scares them, or otherwise is so unbelievable to them that they come to the conclusion immediately that it's a lie, or this person who seems to be very articulate, like I was, and convincing, must be crazy. That this person is crazy, and he is a potential harm to himself. That's what they told me. That they were worried about, I may be a harm to myself and to other people, even though I had never threatened anyone. And there was nothing I said that led anyone to believe that I was going to be harmful to another human being. I was speaking the language of love. I was like, it was amazing, that I was so happy that to learn we're not alone, and that what I was learning from this being is that, we survive the physical death and we come back to continue our journey of spiritual development through multiple lifetimes, and that there's a reason and a purpose for this, and it continues. That's exciting to somebody like myself, who is saddened by the idea that we have such a short lifespan in the scheme of things. It's a blink of an eye if we live 80 years or 100 years. It just seems unfair. And when you realize and you're convinced for sure that, well, no, you're immortal in effect. You just go through multiple physical experiences as part of the process of evolving consciously to become part of something greater than yourself. And that's really ultimately what's going on here.
So is Tejbar something greater than yourself?
Yeah. So what I discovered in the first 13 days with Tejbar is that he was what he called a celestial being. And it's a little complex, but I'll summarize by saying there are 3 realms of creation, according to Tejbar. There's the physical realm that came last. and before it, the astral realm, and before it, the celestial realm. And the celestial realm was created in the Big Bang, in the moment of creation. There was no astral realm, there was no physical realm. It was all pure plasma energy, and the universe rapidly expanding. And at some point, it went through, at its outer edge, it went through a transition state that gave birth and rise to the next realm of consciousness, and that was the astral realm. And as the universe continued to expand, and as a consequence cool down, it went through a second transition, creating the physical realm. And so you can think of it as the three states of matter. You start out with a hot gas that's very energetic and hot, and frenetic. And then as the bubble of gas expands, it cools down because it's a function of thermodynamics, that as something with a certain temperature expands, it will cool down as the volume increases. And on the outer edges, it's coolest. And it's there that it will then change state. So from a gas, the next state of a liquid would be liquid,
yeah.
right? Gas to a liquid, it would condense into a liquid. And then further, the second transition would be from a liquid to a solid, like ice. And we talk about the density of the physical realm. Well, this is what it has, what the meaning of that is that these higher realms are lighter, they're more energetic, and they're less dense than our physical existence. That's the way, according to Tejbar, this universe was created, and that there are these three realms kind of nested inside of one another, and they're separated by a barrier that we might call the veil, and the veil separates these realms from one another so that they don't interact in certain ways. Or maybe it's just a consequence of the nature of the beast. It's like, if you imagine ice on the outside, and on the inside is liquid water, and then on the inside of that, steam, a bubble of steam at the very center. It's just a fact that there's a barrier between those three states of water within itself. And that's the way he described the universe. And then at each realm, or within each realm, you have different levels of consciousness that evolve in those realms. And in the astral realm, that level of consciousness involves non-physical beings, because the physical realm had not been created yet. But you have what you can think of as sentient beings, somehow energy organizing into something that has an identity of self of some kind.
An awareness.
An awareness of itself.
Right.
But it doesn't have a physical body.
Right.
It's not until we have the physical realm and then the creation of stars and planets that consciousness can evolve on a planet in the physical realm, in a container that is our body. And so our bodies are like containers in the consciousness within us we call the soul, but Tejbar referred to as the astral body, which is a stage of the soul. The soul is, going through these stages of growth, kind of like a child. It starts in the womb as a fetus, and then, it's born and it's a baby, and then it gets older and it's a toddler, and then it's a teenager or a, adolescent, and then an adult. And that's very much like what we are.
So what are we doing here? What is this 10-day about? What are we doing here?
The reason that we're doing this is that in 2015, a full 3 years after my initial communion experience with Tejbar, I had been doing a daily meditative practice in which in the morning I would meditate for about a half hour. And one morning I had a vision. It was the first time that I had a vision in which it appeared as though a movie was playing on the inside of my eyelids. And the vision began with me flying through the sky above a cloud deck, and there was the sun on the horizon, like the sun setting. And then I dive down through the clouds and I pop out underneath the cloud deck. And below me, there's this gathering of people. And I continued to descend and land right near them. And it appears that there are thousands of people sitting in silent meditation before a stage. And on the stage is a big Jumbotron TV screen, like you see at sporting events. And there are 3 scenes on this screen. And on the left, it's a scene from Paris. And I know that because there's the Eiffel Tower in the background.
Right.
And in the foreground, there are thousands of people quietly meditating, seated in the lotus position. In the middle screen, it looked like maybe Peru, a step pyramid structure. Again, in the background was the pyramid, and in the foreground were thousands of people meditating. And on the right was some location I couldn't identify, but it looked like a tropical place. And again, in the foreground were thousands of people meditating. And then a date appeared in my third eye in this vision, and the date was July 5th, 2020. And that faded, and then came a new date, July 14th, 2020. And that date then faded. And then the whole vision went away. And I was left with this awareness, or a download really is a better term, that this was a 10-day event to take place from the 5th of July to the 14th of July. And it was going to be a 10-day event for global peace, done with prayer and meditation. 8 days later, I had the same vision in the morning. And that time I got a download that I was the one to organize this event, and that each day would have a theme, and that it was really my job to organize this event and plan it. So this was all the way back in May of 2015. Actually, May 25th was the second vision I had. I then set out to figure out how I was going to pull this off, because I had never organized a global meditation and I wasn't aware of anybody who had. To my surprise, I soon found a guy who had organized something called the Harmonic Convergence in 1987. His name was Jose Arguelles. And like me, he had a vision when he was in Mexico. And the vision was to organize a global event for world peace in which people would come together, meditate for the purpose of promoting peace around the world. And he dedicated his life to that event. You know, that was one of his big projects in his life. He had the vision when he was young. He was a teenager, but he ended up doing it when he was much older. And so when I discovered this about this man, and I had so much in common with him, he was a scientist, I was a scientist, and he had had a vision, I had had a vision, and he had decided to organize a multi-day event, a 2-day event, and he felt, called upon, that there was some kind of mandate given to him to do this. And I could relate to that. Furthermore, when I researched that event back in 1987 more, it took place on August 16th and 17th, I discovered that it coincided with a major alignment of the planets. So on a whim, I decided to do a little research and see where were the planets relative to one another in 2020 during this period of July. And to my surprise, there was a major alignment of the planets. And not only was it a major alignment of the planets, it's unprecedented. There's no record of an alignment like this one that we're going to experience next month.
Wow.
Or today.
No. Say it again. Yeah, say it again. So there's no record. To my knowledge, there's no record.
Yeah, and so I did research on the alignment of the planets, all the history of it, and all the recorded occurrences of major alignments of the planets. And the best I could find was a 6-planet alignment, and a NASA scientist claiming that it only happens every 100 years or so. So a 7-planet alignment, and this is in a tight arc of planets. You can check it out yourself by going to a website. There's a few interactive websites where you can plug in a date and it'll show you a view of the planets in our solar system from any perspective you wish. And what you'll find is that there's a major alignment of 7 planets in our solar system, and that all 9 fall within a quadrant of the ecliptic plane. That's really, really rare. Especially when you start playing, you can start playing with sliders and little time lapses and watch how the planets are rotating around the sun. And it just seems impossible that they would all end up on one side of the sun in one quadrant. And then 7 of them in a line, I couldn't find of a case of that ever in recorded history.
Wow.
And that's what's happening now.
And what does that lend itself to?
Well, I think it just is another confirmation that there's something really special about this time. And it encouraged me or inspired me to continue my research to find out more. And then I got into Greek mythology, and I discovered amazing coincidences that relate to the mythology of the Greek gods in respect to what's happening now. And I'll be sharing more about that, in the coming days. Mm-hmm. And it's really been quite a journey and an amazing education for myself in terms of understanding how special this time is. And now there's no doubt in me that this is the beginning of a new phase of our, of our evolution as a human family, that we are entering a new age, and it's being marked by this event now. I think part of the ushering in of the new age is one in which we begin with love in our hearts, and peace is related to love in the sense that we aren't going to fight. We're going to embrace our diversity on this planet and the realization that we're not alone in the universe for the first time. And not only are we not alone, but they seem to have a relationship with us. We're going to discover that they're right here, and they've been here for a very long time. They've just been very reclusive and secret about their existence to most people. So what is the new awareness? What are we going to learn about them and about ourselves in the coming years, in the coming days even? It's going to be quite a journey. Yeah, it's going to be quite a journey.
Yeah.
And it's very exciting to me.
Yeah.
I think it's exciting to most people, especially young people that are open-minded and intuitively know, of course we're not alone in the universe. We've reached a level of sophistication on this planet that we pretty much know that it's very unlikely that in this vast universe that we're the only living beings or the only planet harboring life in the entire universe. That just doesn't seem like a reasonable assumption anymore.
Right.
And the reality that we are indeed not alone will change the consciousness of us collectively and individually in ways that we have no idea yet. But I'm very excited about it. I think it's all going to result in quite an exciting future.
How do we talk to the skeptics about all of this? In terms of the people that are like, no, there is no other life on this earth. Like, I have been one of those people, and only recently am I beginning to ask the questions that might lead me to believe and know and have that experience that you've had. So how do we talk to that audience?
I can relate to it too. I was a skeptic about the UFO and ET phenomenon until I did some research on my own and became convinced, because there's some very articulate, impressive people that have retired from the military or from the government, like the FAA or NASA, who have come forward and shared amazing stories about their interactions with extraterrestrials from other worlds that are visiting our planet and interacting with our government. I found those people very credible, and that lowered my skepticism to a level where I then decided to go on the 6-day retreat with Greer. And then what happened there totally changed my life and profoundly affected my worldview in this regard. You know, to be a true open-minded skeptic, I think it's important to be a skeptic, that's good, but to be open to new information. And if you go out and read the books or watch videos on YouTube, especially those by Greer and others that do this CE5 protocol, this meditation that supposedly initiates contact with extraterrestrials, that community has grown over the last 5-10 years, where now it's a global community with tens of thousands of people involved. And the reason it's growing so rapidly is because they're having success. And they're beginning to record with the latest video equipment. They can video at night and record the ships that they're summoning through this meditative practice. And it's accelerating. So I encourage any skeptic who really wants to know the truth on this subject matter to be open-minded and to do the homework, read books on the subject, go online, find out more about Greer and the CE5 movement, which at the end of the day is a peace movement.
Right.
Because we are all committed in the CE5 movement to reaching out in a loving way to our brothers and sisters in the cosmos that are here to show themselves. And they are beginning to show themselves on a limited basis with those that are reaching out, but these are small groups of people. What we are doing is an experiment in which we're engaging the planet, all the people who wish to be part of something remarkable that would result in a global sighting, you know, where everybody sees a ship at the same time. And there's no question after this that we are not alone. And that's what is before us. That's the opportunity for us.
And that's on day 10.
That's on July 14th,
That's
Contact
on
Day.
July 14th. That's Contact Day.
World Contact Day.
I would like you to just cover a little bit about what we're going to be experiencing throughout these 10 days. Just over an overview, just to kind of prep the audience and say this is the journey we're going to go on.
In anticipation of the 14th, we want to prepare people for what's about to happen. Primarily out of love. We don't want people to freak out. And I don't believe the ETs will show up if we were to just do a one-night effort.
Right.
We have to prep our human family for this event. And that's what these 10 days are about. Sharing with people some history of the UFO phenomenon. For instance, the fact that the ETs have been around for quite a while, especially since World War II, after the drop of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That created a lot of concern among those from other places. They were very concerned with our loose use of nuclear weapons, and that, you know, they wanted to make sure that we didn't destroy ourselves, and they did intervene at times. There are very well documented cases of UFOs showing up at military sites where there were nuclear weapons, and they disabled them, or otherwise warned the people on the base that they should disarm those weapons.
Right, so we're going to be looking at the history of the UFO movement.
Right.
And what else are we going to be?
So we're going to be learning about people that have had their own contact experiences, or people in history that have had contact experiences in the last 70 years who are no longer with us, like George Van Tassel, George Adamski, and others that have amazing stories to share. And then there are contemporaries, people still with us that have had contact experiences that will be sharing what they've learned from their friends.
And how can people participate? How can we engage from home with this
Well,
event?
we're going to be doing 2 meditations every day, in the morning and in the evening. And that's one way to participate. Just take 20 minutes of your day to join us in a peaceful meditation or prayer. I consider them one and the same, in effect. And join us in a peaceful movement to reach out to our star family, that's what I refer to them as, help us usher in this new age in which it's kicked off with this event in which we make contact with them. And we know for the first time collectively that we're not alone. And that will shift our consciousness into a new level of awareness in which we can let go of certain things that have been holding us back.
Thank you so much, Mark, and keep watching, you guys.
Geologic timelines warp here. Glaciers that predate humanity cling to vastly older mountains, while islands spontaneously arise from the steady flow of silt. To millions of approaching birds, the Copper River Delta is an oasis in a world of ever greater danger. A 50-mile wide spray of braided channels, themselves migrating, dances and twists out to sea. For millions more spawning sockeye, there is no other way home. Their serpentine journey comes full circle in upstream rainforest heavens of hemlock, iridescent berry-lined muskegs, climbing through misty glens along with their guardian brown bears. They ascend toward the wrinkled faces of mountain fortresses that speak the tumult of eons. As ice retreated long ago and forests grew up, the Eyak people grew to fill their place in this habitat. This heaving, rippling fabric of life holds them and their dreams. They look at these mountain peaks and see allies, not coalfields. And so far they've stood the siege of a schizophrenic modernity and the straight lines it swears by. Road, rail, mine shaft and pipeline, the path of bullets, the myth of progress. Their fight for conservation is self-defense, but they have Earth's power behind them, and their victory will belong to us all. Stand with us now to protect one of this planet's last truly wild places.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Harmonic Convergence. We're so excited to have you here with us and for this incredible lineup of wisdom and knowledge and inspiration that we have planned for you all. We're starting off this episode with an incredible conversation about time. So without further ado, I would love for our guests and our presenters to please introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about who you are.
My name is Eran Zahavi. I am a writer, a speaker, a coach, a contemplator, a human, and have been immersed and submerged into the law of time and the dream spell and the conversation and the unfolding of time for a number of years now. I've written extensively on the dream spell, have just swam in it for many years, and really happy to be here with these brilliant people here to have a conversation about a really important and fascinating topic around time. So thank you.
My name is Makua Ray, and it's an honor to be part of this conversation today as well. I consider myself a creative catalyst and a longtime advocate for calendar reform based in large part on the dream spell, but also looking at the alternative of a 13-month, 28-day harmonic standard as an alternative to the Gregorian calendar, which we'll possibly talk a bit about how that has us a little bit out of sync with nature. We're actually considerably out of sync with nature, to be correct, but exploring what the new time looks like and the benefits of that for people to really consider this as a path forward.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Ruben Ginaz. I'm from Colombia, South America. I consider myself a consciousness explorer and a bridge builder between paradigms, between dimensions, and between time and space. I'm currently, well, I have been for a while, for this last 7 years, inspired by the work that Jose and Loidina Arguelles left to this world, inspired by the work we created back in 2013, the Harmonic Convergence 2013 page, which evolved over time to the current Harmonic Convergence 2020 page. And we try to keep this as an educational space for people from different streams of consciousness over the planet to track the pulse of events on Earth and find a way to understand the different layers of the process, the evolutionary process that we are right now undergoing. And as part of this exercise or this exploration, I have been collaborating with Makua in the creation of a small body called the Global Council of Calendar Awareness. Our aim is to create educational materials for people to have access to this super valuable information, and I'm sure that after this conversation, people are going to feel excited about something new, like a new way to approach the systems change that we are now undergoing.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. Before we dive in, Ruben, do you mind sharing with us a little bit about the first harmonic convergence, as we are the second chapter of that in some ways, so that all of our audience and listeners can get a really good sense of what came before us?
Thank you so much. Yeah, this is very important because it's we are speaking about we are riding the wave or that. Our ancestors started, and when we speak about the people who really started this wave or this new stream of energy that is going, it's been going throughout the years and the different cultures, the different groups around the earth, is that in the 70s, Tony Shearer, which is an American poet and a journalist, he wrote a book from the teachings of prophecies that he learned here in Mexico. And in his book was called The Lord of the Dawn, and he spoke about the life of the prophet Seacatl Topilstin Quetzalcoatl. This is a prophetic figure that walked the land of Mexico back from 1947 to 1999 after Christ, and who left a prophecy that was speaking about 13 cycles of harmony, followed by 9 cycles of disharmony. So 13 cycles of a really expansion of the Mayan culture, followed by 9 cycles of challenges that ended with the Harmonic Convergence of 1987. And since then, we entered in a transition period of 26 years to 2013, which is a fractal of the 26,000 years of the precession of the equinoxes. So this window between 1987 to 2013, these 26 years, and now these 7 years from 2013 to 2020 are a cycle of great significance for the consciousness of the planet, for the evolution, for all these cycles that we have been completing. Since we have this new understanding of time, because that's the other part of the harmonic convergence that Jose and Loidin were already working with the mathematics of the Mayan calendar back in the 80s. And thanks to their collaboration with Tony Shearer, they were able to organize this event and motivate, inspire people from all over the world to gather at sacred sites on August 16 and 17, 1987. And in this way, send a wave of love and good energy to not only to other intelligence in the cosmos, but to the planet. We really want to become more connected to the planet, more grounded, and I think that the time that we are living right now is testing our ability to really respond and be in tune with the earth. That's how this energy is going to really work out through us, is when we become one with the earth.
Beautiful, amazing. So my question to you is, you know, why was Jose Arguelles so adamant about the importance of shifting away from the Gregorian calendar, and how that was related to the first harmonic convergence? And this is a question for all that I would love all three of you to respond to. You could start, Ruben.
No, I think Makua is a good, because we spoke about this a little bit. Yeah, go ahead.
So, it's interesting. The idea of shifting from the Gregorian came about really with something that happened a little bit later called the discovery of the law of time, where it became evident that there was an erroneous functionality of this Gregorian system. The timing system was distinctively out of sync with nature. But with the harmonic convergence, what really was happening then was a recognition of something called the advent of the noosphere, or the thinking layer of the earth. So there was an aspect to the recognition of the harmonic convergence, which was meant to actually usher in this thinking layer, or the collective consciousness of the planet, that it will become more aware of itself. And so that was initiated essentially, but then furthermore, the realization of the issue or the error of time became more obvious in terms of the way the Gregorian calendar as a programming system was pulling all of us out of sync, and had been for so long. That it really became something that needed to be addressed very specifically, which then gave rise to something called the 13-moon calendar, 13-moon calendar peace change movement. Something that it was a very long name, to be honest, but these things have happened in stages. So initially it was really the harmonic convergence, but it was preceded by a very important book called The Mayan Factor as well. It's important to mention that because that did bring an insight into some of the speculative knowledge of the Maya, and perhaps their role of the galactic Maya specifically, and their role in terms of time travel and considerations that would have an impact on us currently. Then following that was a regard or an awareness of the error in time, and then becoming now what has been the calendar change movement. That's kind of the modern era calendar change movement, but with the other understandings that have been accumulated to now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Aaron,
if either of you also want to elaborate.
Yeah, please, Aaron.
Yeah, well, I think with the calendar is a system of tracking, and it's a system of measurement.
Mm-hmm.
And we can look at the container of it, of how we're going to track our time. But the beauty of it is that even if we don't necessarily know the rhythms of the 13 moon calendar, and it's something that obviously is very important to understand, we can start to adapt and integrate different qualities of the experiential unfolding of the calendar, even if you don't necessarily know the names of the days, or you don't know the energies of all of the 13 months. And certain ways of just understanding that we can track our time qualitatively instead of quantitatively. And that's a really big heart, because, you know, what I've experienced, sometimes people, anybody who comes across this 13 moon calendar and starts to spend some time with it, it starts to reveal itself and make sense. But the more that we get into practice of living in these natural harmonies and cyclicalities of life, the more it truly will just reveal itself, that when you do come across it and you do read about it, that it'll say, oh, this is, of course, this makes sense. And to give you a tangible example, so like I'll ask you, Beta, think about the time of your life, whatever was the time of your life, right? When you think about that, are you thinking, oh, it was Tuesday, or oh, it was like 12 hours? No, of course not. You're thinking about the quality of the experience of the time that you have. And you think about times when you're in a flow state, times when you are maybe just having a great conversation, or you're playing with your children, or you're in love, or you're meditating, or just having a really good meal. And at those times, what does Monday mean? What does 5:30 mean? You know, it literally doesn't mean anything. And then so you can imagine actually living a life where you measure your time, not quantitatively by how many hours you spent or how much money you made, but by how much joy you created, how much love you experienced, how much impact you had. And so you can literally measure it in a qualitative stance. And that's something that everybody can start to do right now, and is actually happening a lot with what's happening on the planet, which is one of the beautiful aspects of this period right now, is that we are starting to disconnect from having an importance of what the Gregorian calendar is telling us. There's so many people that doesn't quite matter. Is it Thursday? Is it Saturday? Is it the weekend? Is it 7? Is it 2? What is the quality of the experience? And so the beauty of this 13 moon calendar and switching up the Gregorian calendar is that it gives us a framework and a context that's steeped in profound mathematics of the natural world, to give us a system where we can track this qualitative way of living life.
That's really amazing. I'd be really curious, based on what you're sharing, Iran, what do you all mean by this concept of time is art? We'd love for you to share a little bit more about that.
Well, I want to add and connect to the last question, that in the Mayan factor, Jose made a clear distinction between natural time and artificial time, or mechanical time, and this distinction, it's what allows us to have the contrast to perceive time in different ways, and to be able to have this qualitative aspect that Aaron speaks, or to just use it as a tool for scheduling our activities. So the path beyond, when he speaks about the path beyond technologies, is the path of evolution of the planet that is independent of technology. It's not creating more clever machines that will do the work for us, but is evolving our minds so that we can evolve our consciousness. In order to evolve our minds, we need to connect with the cycles of nature, because they are the one pacing the rhythms and the cycles of evolution on Earth. And in the Mayan factor, these cycles of evolution on Earth were perfectly tracked by the Maya as the 13 Bactun cycle, which is the 13 periods of evolution on Earth, in which we can condense human civilization. from 3113 BC to 2012. So we are on the other side of this evolutionary cycle that we transcended in 2012, and we are now in the new hologram or the new time. There is a measurement of incoming pulses from the galaxy, and 2012 was an incoming pulse of new energy, of new codes, of new evolutionary tools that we can use to foster this evolution of consciousness of Earth. So this is what Makua was describing as the biosphere-noosphere transition. We are becoming more and more self-aware, and part of this realization that we are cells of a living body called the Earth is tuning in with these cycles, because they are the cycles that are pacing the evolution on Earth. So these 13 cycles of evolution that we finish in 2012, each one corresponds to approximately 20 generations each. So after 13 cycles of 20 generations each, we are at a new threshold, which is the year 2020. One generation is 20 years, and that's why the Maya were measuring these cycles of approximately 20 years called katuns. So each katun is one generation. So there is a genetic upgrade after one generation. Once we have condensed the compounded evolution from 260 generations in 2012. Now we are at the start of a new cycle, and the year 2020 marks this threshold of 20 years of one generation, or the first generation of the first millennium, of the third millennium, which according to the Gregorian calendar we are in transiting that point, which puts us again into this question: what is time, and how we relate to time in the year 2020 from what? So and that's why it's important to make the distinction that we live, our consciousness operates in a hologram that is based in time and space, and that intersection of time and space is our point of consciousness, and each point of consciousness experiences time and space in a slightly different ways, but we are all part of a larger pattern. So we are coming to recognize our place in time and space, and recognize ourselves as another reflection of us. That's the purpose of the In Lakesh philosophy of the Maya, is to recognize, we are all we are not alone, and we are all part of the same body. So it's like when the fingers in the hand recognize that they are part of the same hand. We are going through that momentum of becoming more and more conscious, and what Jose launched since the whole Third Festival in the 70s was, he was impacted by the images that came from the Apollo mission, from the moon. And it was the first time that we recognized ourselves, that we were all fitting in that little circle, and that somehow we are one. So it's taking a while for us to come to that full realization, but we are in that process. We are in the stepping stones, and I think that having a new understanding of time will help us in that step-by-step process for the next years.
And specifically to the idea of time as art, that represents the shift in consciousness that we're moving through currently since the discovery of what's called the law of time, which was very significant and formed the basis of the foundation for the law of time. But it recognized that the Gregorian calendar itself was mechanized, artificial, as has been said, and that the shift in consciousness allows us to realize the amazing creative opportunity we do have qualitatively, as Aaron has stated, because we can move from this notion of time as money, which is a static sort of program, that we have to recognize we've been operating in via the Gregorian calendar for over 400 years as the dominant global civil standard. But the opening became a remembrance of our participation in a far vaster community, and particularly with the idea of convergence, a harmonic convergence avails us to recognize that we're part of a much greater creative tapestry than we have been conditioned to think. And so by shifting to a perspective of time as art, it literally is as if we're shifting beyond the third dimension as our dominant scope and availing ourselves into this idea of the fourth dimension and beyond, that is an equation of T equals T factored by energy equals art. Or in other words, synchronicity when factoring anything of energy, okay, the E of is energy, creates beauty. And that we can actually move forward with a notion that we're contributing to beauty as creative beings ourselves. And the idea of shifting into a different calendar is to actually recognize that time is of the mind. And it also is the atmosphere of consciousness, or that sense of quality that's important to state. It's a major difference than sort of being operating as more mechanized beings when we're not actually designed that way. So by shifting your calendar, you actually create a new panorama of experience for oneself. And the beauty of synchronicity is it's very subjective. So I can't necessarily tell another person what the synchronicity is for them. It's something that they know and feel. And as we each begin to liberate ourselves into knowing and feeling more sensitively and I think with more expansiveness, then we're going to continue to see the shift in this general direction. But as Ruben has pointed out, these generations are spans of time, and it may seem like it's taking a period of time to achieve that. But I think if anything is teaching us of this moment on the planet, we're at such an epic point of transition in the first few years beyond this threshold moment of 2012. It's like we're really beginning to realize at a very rudimentary stage in the galactic sense who we are and why we're here and what we have a chance to create together.
Yeah, amazing.
You know, we're seeing across the board this convergence of science and spirituality. And for the longest time, our greatest spiritual teachers and leaders would tell us that we come from this infinite creative source. And now science, through the growth and understanding through quantum physics, is telling us that we come from this infinite creative source. And we've just given it different names. And so you can call it God, you can call it source, you can call it energy, whatever it may be. But what's really undisputable, whether you look at it from logical or rational or pragmatic or scientific or observational or intuitive, is that there is a singular infinite field of creative source energy from which all of life is manifest from. Energy creates matter, matter doesn't create energy. So from that aspect, we know that every single aspect of our entire self is wholly, fully embodied within this creative source energy. The same creative source energy that literally creates worlds and galaxies and universes. And so by us owning and embodying this creative source, we recognize that every single thing that we think, every single thing that we do, every single thing that we intend is an act of creation. And in that, the act of creation and giving to life is art. That's what art is simply the act of creation. So when you do live in a qualitative way of expressing whatever it is, it's like looking at the understanding that life isn't happening to us. We are happening to life. And where, these guys talked about an understanding the noosphere of the mind, we recognize that the entirety of the universe, everything within the universe exists within our own conscious awareness. It's all within the mind. And so when you have this mind, body, spirit complex, the body without the spirit would be consciousless form. And the spirit without the body is formless consciousness. And it's the mind that creates the bridge for it all to work together. Now, what the distortion has come is that we have been taught through the Gregorian calendar and other sorts of conditioning, not the Gregorian calendar alone, but as the container for it, that we need to look externally for what's best for us. So we look for cues in space, in the outside world, to tell us what we should eat, what we should drink, who we should love, how we should dress, how we should heal ourselves, what's our medicine, what we should look like, all of these sorts of things. And we're dissuaded from looking internally into our own guidance, our own moral compass, our own spirit, our own connection into this source. And so the shift by looking internally now is allowing us to reconnect to our divinity, into our sovereignty. And that is the shift of really taking back our own power to be able to be creators. And, you know, I'll give sort of one example. If you look at it from a military example, think what you want about military, but the example works. You have the commander who kind of sees everything, right? Is the one who's got like the map, and I always picture him with like underneath like a covering with a big stick, but I'm sure it's more technologically advanced right now. They see everything. And then you got the general who's out in the field, kind of calling the shots, and then you have the troops, which are going out and actually making things happen. The commander is the spirit. It can see everything, right? The whole picture. The general is the mind who actually gets to control and say what's happening, and the troops are the body, and they exist in space. So what happens when the general has the communication cut off from the commander? Still going to do the best that he can, but with what he can see. And so that's what's happened with the calendar, is that now the mind is looking externally for its cues, because it's not actually getting the communication from the spirit, from the piece that can see all. Mm-hmm. And so we a lot of times we want to get angry or blame the mind or blame the ego, but it's just doing the best that it can with what it can see. And so the opportunity by reconnecting to the commander, reconnecting to the spirit, reconnecting to the source, and shifting that's where the calendar comes in, it allows us to then actually be able to get a bigger picture of everything that's happening. We're still honoring the mind, we're still honoring the body, we still need to go out and make things happen in physical form. We do live in 3D, in three-dimensional space, but it's that connection and that communication really to the self, to the source, and then tapping into these other systems, understanding how these containers of measurement are distorting us to look externally, allows us to shift that to just reveal what's always there. But tapping into that communication, it's really not even about learning anything new. We're just remembering. We're remembering our truth. And but with that, the dissolution of the artificial comes, and the art comes because we're just embodying ourselves as the creators that we are.
Right. Amazing.
Yeah, Jose made emphasis that we are all artists and we are all mathematicians and we are all human beings. So there is the potential for the art, the science, and the spirituality to work as one, and that was part of his message and Loidin's message. It was to promote the calendar and these natural rhythms, the tracking of these natural rhythms as a way of attaining peace. That's why they adopted the banner of peace, which is this symbol that I'm carrying and that Aaron has on his arm. And it's the symbol became like a representation of peace through culture and the unifications of all spiritual streams, all sciences, all arts into one unified body that is peace through culture. So these are we have thanks to the pioneering work of Jose Loidin, Tony Shearer, Nicolas and Elena Roerich, and John Lennon, and Yoko Ono, and all the people who have been bringing a message of peace through harmony, through art. I think that's the most powerful catalyst that we can learn from to connect with that root that we are all artists, no matter what we do or what is our profession. Our life is an act of creation. And therefore, everything that we invest our time and energy is art. It can be a conscious creation or it can be an unconscious creation. And we are in the process of collectively creating more consciously and becoming more conscious about the unconscious creation. I think that's the process that is right now unfolding. And as part of this, the unconscious, the collective unconscious is coming out. It needs to be addressed, recognized, and integrated so we can move forward with the next stage of evolution on Earth. And it has to do with becoming a cosmic civilization, becoming part of a larger community, so that we can transcend through art our differences and become part of this new community, larger community.
Amazing. The theme of our day today is inner peace, and how inner peace is the first step towards world peace. And so with that said, I'm curious to hear all three of your perspectives on how being placed inside of unnatural Gregorian calendar time, how that can disconnect us from harmony and from peace, and how that might have been even deliberately intended to disconnect us from peace, and how we can go ahead and rectify that.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a great conversation to be had about the intentionality of the distortion. And I don't know about you, we've all had that conversation. It's fascinating. For me, I honestly don't even think that's necessary to talk about in this container, is the intentionality of the distortion. Just to know it's there, like it's available to find out. But what we're really getting at is, okay, what are we going to do with it right now? What is the opportunity? Whether it was intentional or whether it was people that really were just trying to do their best and kind of screwed up a little bit. Even if that were the case, we know something still needs to shift. And so that's where it comes into that inner peace, where we don't want to fall so much into, it's absolutely important to understand the history and the unfolding. I'm not trying to make light of that at all, but tapping into the inner peace is that regardless of what it is, it doesn't change the opportunity that we have right now and what's possible. And so with the idea of inner peace, kind of going back to what I said earlier, the entirety of all of existence exists within our conscious awareness. Every single thing we do is an act of creation. And so what we are is what we create, is what is reflected to us. As above, so below. And so if we want to experience peace, then we need to be able to create peace. That's the way it works. And the beauty, the really kind of the mischievous beauty, I think, of the universe is that to help us to embody the creators that we are, living in a world that we can experience polarity, is that often we are shown the opposite or the polarity of what it is that we want. So if we want peace, then what we may be shown is turmoil, because in the turmoil we have the opportunity to create peace. And that's a beautiful gift inside of that. And to embody the creator as we're learning and expanding. If we were just handed peace on a silver platter, that would be nice, that would be great, but we're only receiving. And so we have the opportunity to create. And so that's where the inner peace is so important. And one last thing that I want to say about peace is that I think we have a little bit of a distorted feeling of what the actuality of peace is. And where Ruben mentioned the concept of peace as culture. I think in our current society, what we're taught is that peace is something that we insert into a culture. So we have a culture, and inside of it is peace. But the actuality of it, the actual resonance, is that peace is the culture. And inside of the culture of peace is where the society lives. And so that's for us to be able to embody that container of peace. And, even within that, I don't think, for one, that entire peace necessarily means it's perfection. Martin Luther King talked about the beloved community, which is in line with this a lot. And inside the beloved community, there is still disagreement. It doesn't mean that everybody necessarily agrees on everything, but it's the manner in which we relate to each other, then that we connect with each other, that we can work with each other, that we can communicate with each other, that represents the container of peace that we've created.
Amazing.
Yeah, I would like to add to this concept that the concept of peace and harmony are really connected. So the more life-affirming tools we use, the more peace we are going to experience. The more less affirming tools, life-affirming tools, we're going to experience some friction. So in order to address the intentionality or not, or the reasons behind the intentionality for not having this understanding as part of the educational programs of Earth right now, it doesn't matter. It gives us the opportunity to reintroduce it, to present it to new generations that can evolve the concept. And the purpose of tracking the Gregorian calendar and the 13-month calendar, because probably we also need to differentiate if that is not either or, is both and, because we need, for practical use, the Gregorian calendar while we understand how the new tools or the new ancient tools work. So it really, it's a beautiful exercise to integrate the two, even though they are polar opposites. There is a point of integration of the two, because the beauty of these mathematics behind the calendar is that they work. They're all inclusive. They accommodate in its fractality and beauty all these cycles. And right now we are going through a reharmonization of timelines. We are going through this process since 2012. So even though it looks chaotic right now, we are just experiencing like a reverberation of years of using the wrong harmonic standard. So we have been creating harm because we derail from the natural cycles, and we give the machine power on human activities. That's how the concept of time is money really got steam. It was with the Industrial Revolution. So these cycles that we explained before, the 13 cycles of 20 generations each, that last 13 cycle of 20 generations corresponds to the mechanization of time. So we attach all our ideas and concepts about time to the clock and the calendar, and this created like a shield from discovering the true nature of time. So now that we are on the other side of that process of hide and seek, of forgetting and now remembering again, we are in the process of remembering. Since 2012, we remember more and more and more, and this is Harmonic Convergence 2020 is really this. It's coming to this point of recognition that this is the time, that now more than ever we need to create these spaces, create the ways to connect, create the avenues to connect between ourselves and with the larger community out there. That I'm sure that as many people believe, it must be paying attention to the experiment here on Earth, and what an exciting time to be alive, to shift the timelines and integrate all these timelines at this point in time, 2020.
I just wanted to add as well, just to kind of bookend this. It's important not to neglect to know that the Gregorian calendar has been a tool of domination. And that's a very important state, because it's actually the method through which people have been controlled. We're at a time of liberating ourselves from being subject to this type of control, the in-depth sense of what this actually means and how it's played out over centuries. So it's no small thing to consider actually shifting timelines. It's actually a huge healing en masse, both for the planetary human species, but also for the planet itself that's been subjected to our behavior under this domination control. So I do think it's important to state it. I don't want to declare the intention, but it's pretty self-evident that there has been some fear factor driving greed, coercion, manipulation, and control through an entirety of systems that have become instituted and subjected to over the continents, over the whole planet. So it's no small thing what we're actually talking about here. And it is met with the reality that we're remembering actually who we are, as Aaron has stated, as Ruben's been indicating, that we are creator beings, if you will, embodied for a purpose of making the shift from harm, grave harm, into phenomenal harmony. And that shift requires a shift in consciousness. The calendar is meant to be a roadmap for how we can begin to now reimagine ourselves as an organic life within a tapestry of amazing, spectacular life, and actually fostering and exhibiting and living into this harmony, recognizing that we're shifting from something that's actually been disconnected from nature, from harmony, or cut off, as Aaron was saying as well. We've been cut off from source. But now as we get that back, and we realize that we're as responsible for this, now that it's in our hands, what will we do with it? Because we're reclaiming that. And it's an exercise in sovereignty, galactic sovereignty even, to realize that we're responsible for that. But also to make sure that we're not moving from one form of manipulation into another. We have to hold each other accountable. And I think as we dissolve the greed in particular, the greed has been one of the most tragic conditions that we've been inclined toward through this idea that time is money. That money has become the representation of our value, when in fact we're inherently valuable, not defined by money per se, by that fiction, but living into the true value of who we are as souls and consciousness. And to be able to claim that now, I think, is a really remarkable opportunity as part of this evolution phasing that we've been tracking in these converging timelines.
I'm so glad you just said everything you said. You bring up so many crucially important points. And the part about the destruction of it, kind of going back to what you were talking about, Ruben, and we were talking about the connection of all things, we've been taught this really distorted bill of goods that we say, it's like if the hand were to cut off the foot and then sell it, that would be a success because it made money from the sale of the foot, even though it's bleeding, in another part of its body, which is totally, it's literally insane. And that's exactly what we're doing here. And so the opportunity of connecting into that noosphere, that collective mind, if we plug into that, then we're going to be able to get the right orders, so to speak, of how we can best serve, where we know that we're not sacrificing our own self for the good of others, it's all part of the same thing. And that's one of the biggest distortions within the Gregorian calendar, and also even when you start to get into the 12-hour clock, but recognizing that in many ways it's actually in some ways tracking space. And that's a huge distortion, because in the dimensions of space, and even to break that down, it's very simple: length, width, and height. That's 3 dimensions, 3D. That's space. Okay. In that space where Newtonian physics excels, where we look at matter, we experience decay. That happens. But in fourth dimensional time, in the infinite, there is no decay in the infinite. It's eternal. And so now that we've got our minds conditioned into thinking that time as we know it through the Gregorian calendar is real, that's what creates the fear. That's what creates these feelings of scarcity, when the truth is there is no scarcity. It's when there's the idea that it's finite, it's going to end, when the truth is that it's infinite. So it's those distortions of finite, scarce reality that creates the need to think of having the greed and wanting to have the hoarding and needing to have more. And it is all absolutely within that container. But when we connect into the truth of the sovereign, divine, infinite self, then all of that just kind of goes away, because we realize it's an artificial creation.
Just if you could abbreviate it and give some very brief references, what really is the law of time?
The Jose described the law of time as the principle that governs our third dimensional reality, and the law of time states that time is art, so time factored by energy equals art. That means that since the world of space is governed by for instance, the law of gravity, which is the formula to calculate our attraction to bodies, the law of time defines time as the fourth dimension. And this fourth dimension is an envelope that encompasses this third dimension, is the organizing principle that synchronizes everything and organizing all the events in space over time. That's why he emphasized this concept of time as art in contrast to time is money. One is based on an artificial understanding and paradigm of time. The other one is based on an organic living hologram that is informing biology every day. Time informs biology. It gives form to these geometries that we see in flowers in nature, the Fibonacci spiral, the sunflower, the proportions of our body, our hands. That's what creates beauty. And beauty also engenders harmony. Harmony engenders peace. So the more we tune in to these patterns in nature, the more we are going to mimic nature and fuse with this force that it's informing us all the time, which is time. So there is a shift in consciousness that has to happen first, and when you are opening that space for new information to come in and for new perceptions to come in, then you can perceive the beauty of creation in high definition. I always make the parallel between going to a 3D movie with your glasses or without your glasses. This just gives us like high resolution to appreciate cycles within cycles within cycles, how they inform our daily life, how they inform the life of our loved ones, and how even events on Earth are a function of these patterns and these cycles that come to a conclusion, sometimes a repetition. And what we are doing right now is just going to the next song or the next harmonic in this cycle of evolution. And that's what 2020 is about. The 2020 is a balanced number. It's part of the concept of time is art. 2020 vision. It gives us an opportunity to really harmonize and balance our equation with nature.
Amazing. Thank you so much to all three of you and for this very fascinating conversation. I would honestly be able to talk to you for hours and hours about time. There's so many other questions, especially around the 13 moon calendar. So would each of you please share where our viewers can find out more information if they want to reach out to each of one of you or get a hold of you, if you have websites or any materials that you'd like to share with our audience?
I was going to say, my name is spelled Mikuakrai, and I have music online and things like that that may be inspirational for you. But in terms of some of the web work that we have, people can visit 13months28days.info. That's a website in particular we'd like to point out. And we're also launching very soon a website, harmoniccalendar.info. which is the 1328, but it's just the evolution of that as we've been wrapping up now a 4-year window of campaigning and raising awareness about the calendar.
For me, I think my name is probably written there, but you can just go to my website is eronzahavi.com. And from there, I have a course called the Warrior Code, Intelligent Fearlessness, which is based on the teachings and the understanding of the warrior archetype from the dream spell. And it is a very applicable, practical way to integrate a lot of what we talked about here in an unfolding to start actually living qualitatively time equals art. And then I also work with people in individual one-on-one settings in terms of transformation and applying and integrating some of these things into their lives. So always happy to work and connect with anyone who's interested in expanding themselves and living in a culture of peace and, ushering in the peaceful kingdom however we can as creators.
I'm currently working with Makua. We are currently working on launching this new website called Harmonic Calendar.info. It's part of the integration of the different calendars under one new container. And as part of that process, I'm also making available a new website that we are still developing, but it's a new way to track Venus cycles. It's called venuscalendar.org. And in this website, we are developing a new tool or new tools that can help us understand how time is also reflected in these patterns of nature, and how we can entrain our minds with how nature creates all her shapes in the universe. So I'm happy to also participate of the Harmonic Convergence by making the Harmonic Convergence 2020 Facebook page available for this event, and co-creating with Unify, with Aaron and Mark, all the people involved in putting this event together, in creating like a full experience that we can really track this event according to the cycles of the law of time, and that we can honor all the people who have been putting their intentions and energy in creating of this planet a work of art. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and we are co-creating the future. Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you to you all. Thank you, Ruben. Thank you, Mikuak and Iran. I hope I said that correctly.
Bita, can I throw in? I want to throw in a quick quote from Jose that I think is so relevant.
Oh, yeah.
Before we finish up, this is all about actually creating the world that we want, right? Whether it's planetary, galactic, whatever it is, that we have the ability to do it. And what he said was, who owns your time owns your mind. Change your mind and change your time and you change your mind. Change your mind and you change your world. So the opportunity is there. We have the ability to do this. Everything is there by just shifting it within the mind and shifting the time to change the world to exactly what we want it to be. It's just waiting for us.
Amazing. Wow, powerful words. Thank you, Iran, for sharing that. We will definitely make sure all those links are available on our website, linked to your speaker bios. And once again, thank you for participating in this fascinating conversation and teaching us about how to come into natural harmony with time and the rest of the universe. So saying thanks to you from Unify, and
Thank you, Unify.
Thank you, Unify.
Thank you. Peace and love.
Welcome to the Harmonic Convergence 2020. I invite you to take in these magnificent visuals of Mother Earth, our home planet. I invite you to take in these magnificent visuals of Mother Earth, our home planet. When you're ready, close your eyes and bring your attention inwards. Allowing these sound waves to take you on an inward journey. Connect with your breath like an anchor. And take a few deep cleansing breaths, feeling the rise and fall of your chest and abdomen. Deep breath in and long breath out. As you inhale, drawing in fresh life force, prana, oxygen into your system. And as you exhale, letting go, releasing anything that is no longer in alignment with who you are. Allow the space of your awareness to expand. As if you are swimming freely in an ocean of sound. Set yourself free, as if you are shedding your skin. Leaving any old parts behind. As you are swimming through this ocean of sound. And as you look around, there are fellow beings with you right here, right now, like a school of dolphins. Swimming, playing, interacting with each other.
Hi everyone, my name is Patrick Cronfley with Unify. Welcome to day one of the Harmonic Convergence 2020. Today the theme is the universe within. And the theme was really inspired because we all have such a deep inspiration for transforming the world for better and creating peace. But the first step towards world peace is developing our inner peace. And today I'm live actually right now in Ojai, California at our studio. And I have the privilege of interviewing Chief Phil Lane Jr. I've known Chief for many years. He's been an ally on the front lines of so much movement and peace building over the years. And the last time we actually saw each other was in upstate New York at an event with the 13 indigenous grandmothers, both of us showing up in a reverence to the feminine and in support to the feminine on this planet as we develop our own sacred masculine. And so it's with a true deep care and love and passion and excitement that I invite Chief Phil Lane Jr. onto this interview. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you so much, Toshka. At this very, very important dialogue, this very important discussion that's being held by the Harmonic Convergence 2020, especially this question about peace within, and what does it take to have peace within. And I think, Toshka, as I reflected on these three questions that we're going to share today, I think it's important to really understand the nature of the universe we're living in, and how then this 10 days, and in particular the 10th day, fit into this. But as we know, best scientifically and spiritually, we know from the various sacred texts or indigenous cultures, from oral traditions, as well as what we know understand scientifically, is that there was a time, way back there, when the seed crystal of creation, of this entire universe in which we lived, just like at the time of conception of our lives, it just went and began to spread. Now, whether this is going to go out and come back again, and it's a rhythm, we don't know. But at this point, we can see it's spreading. Now, what's interesting is that as we begin to say, for instance, take Black Elk's understanding when he said the center of the universe is everywhere. And so, for instance, we can take the atomic chart and pretty well go any place in this incredible, almost limitless universe, and that atomic chart applies. For instance, we know that iron is created in supernovas at super huge temperatures in supernovas. But what is at the center of the hemoglobin of our blood? Iron. Literally, iron is at the center of our hemoglobin, our blood, and iron is the created in supernovas. So we are literally the universe, and the universe is consciousness, and that's who we are. So if we go back to that beginning, in which we were part of that seed crystal, That's why I always talk about the prior unity of all life and oneness, but the prior unity and oneness of the human family as well. So we were there. Life was in that seed crystal at that beginning. And so when that life was shared throughout the universe, obviously every star has its fixed planets in which there's life unknown in number, because the very life that came here was part of that seed crystal in which was shared throughout the universe. So life is everywhere. So even the question, for instance, is there life on other planets or other star systems and so forth? I mean, there should be no more discussion about this any more than there was when they finally discovered that the Earth's not the center of the universe. And then some people believe the sun was the center of the universe, and of course they had to change her. It's the same thing with this. So we know for sure that there is life, and life has to be composed primarily, if they're in this plane of existence, with the actual, what we find the atomic chart, which means probably have iron in there, whatever. Now, the part of us that's conscious, this consciousness, so to speak. Now, that's another question we have to ask about within, in the world within. And maybe I can use this example so we can go from outside, which is essentially this plane of existence, is organized according to certain natural physical laws, which we can see. They are made up of the same substances that are right here where I'm sitting, or where you're sitting, or where anybody's sitting, or this call, or if we're sitting on the moon, or sitting 100 million light years from now. The substance of this plane of existence is one plane of existence. Now, so let's see what happens when